Greetings to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the globe you are. So this particular panel is on a very interesting theme on defense against radical threats, um, and primarily to give the important message saying that cybersecurity starts with you. Now, what is these radical threats and how do we really look at this from a perspective? Well, it's a kind of a coined word, but then I would rather put it as something which has been so sophisticated, well planned, and it is not just targeting just getting a small pie out of any organization, but really making a very significant impact to organizations. One of the best examples I can get from my experience and knowledge is in terms of an urban cooperative bank in India, which was a 112-year-old bank. And typically we see that they had a 12 million US dollar attack. They lost that much of money, and the attack was very well planned. It was a combination of some of the latest techniques, of course, starting from spear phishing attacks and then going on into lateral movements and a lot of things. But then if you look at the impact was that they were able to switch the bank's original ATM switch to a proxy switch, which they had created with fake card bins. And they had obviously pre-planned all the entire hacker community with those card numbers being printed into cards. And they were able to withdraw this money across 28 countries with almost close to about 15,000 transactions within a matter of just a couple of hours. And they just didn't stop there. The cash was withdrawn. Obviously, it did not affect the customer accounts, but then the money was gone because that was in that box there. But then they did not stop there. In the lateral movement, the hackers found out there was a vulnerable SWIFT capability, which is for international transfer of funds. And they were able to take over that system and transfer a good amount of money out to Hong Kong. And so the damage was done within, very, very small span of time. And by the time the organization could understand what was going on, they had already lost all the money. And obviously, getting back such kind of money often is a problem. So that is where we are moving in terms of the character of attacks, especially when it comes to very such coordinated, well-planned attacks. We have seen many of them happening with the Ukraine power grid and a whole lot of things which are affecting many of the financial institutions. So that's the background of this topic. But then ultimately, everywhere, if you see, there is one vulnerability wherein it is due to a silly mistake or somebody not really waking up to a prior kind of message or whatever. So that's where I think the real caption in all this is the hackers are giving you a clear message. If you are an idiot, we'll make sure we use you. So that's a kind of, I think, a very, very strong message that is getting created. So it is time, I think, to wake up. And I have a fantastic panel with me. We have Raj Vishwanath, who is the CISO with a fintech NIUM, and he has a lot of experience handling issues on cybersecurity, discussing on them, and mentoring of the fintechs. Then we have KM Vijay Kumar, who is the Vice President of ISC Chennai chapter and going to be soon the President. He heads the global security assurance for the managed security services at Tata Communications. And he obviously has significant amount of experience over more than a decade, I would guess, dealing with large clients, different verticals of and the problems that they face and how he sees their perspective. And then we have Madam Panchi Subramaniam. She is the Managing Director of Yes Panchi Tech Services Private Limited, a startup which specializes in tech products as well as services. So that's a great panel there. And I think without really wasting much time, I'm going to put up the very first question to the panel. And I think we can go in the same order with maybe Raj starting this conversation. And then we have Vijay Kumar, and then we go to Panchi to answer this important question from your perspectives of each of your, the environments that you operate in and the customers and whatever you handle. What do you think that in your perspective is a character of attacks that you see transforming, and where are they going into the future? So from what you're seeing in the near past, what's happening now, and the kind of complexity of technology that's really changing the entire character of the ecosystem, and where is it going into the future? If you can start with Raj.
Thanks, Vital. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk here. So before I start, I think I'll probably spend a couple of minutes on what NIAM does as a fintech and to really understand why cybersecurity is so important for us, right? So NIAM is Southeast Asia's first global B2B payments unicorn that provides businesses of any size access to global payment services through an API. So whether it's a small company or a large institution, you can just connect to our platform and have access to send payments, receive payments, issue cards, essentially banking as a service to any country in their preferred local currency. Okay? So with payments to at least 100 plus countries, you can now imagine why cybersecurity is a very important agenda for us and the board of directors. What we are seeing is we are continuing to see increasing number of attacks with greater adoption of digital banking in emerging markets. I think the trends are likely to continue. Right? A lot of people have spoken about ransomware attacks, and it continues to be one of the fastest growing attacks. But if you look at what are the attacks themselves, right? They're not nothing radical or new, but there are more like the common attack vectors that we have seen in the past, like business email compromise, phishing, malicious insiders, social engineering, compromised credentials. So if you look at the themes, right, there are still this age-old themes, but they are adding a radical new technology into it. If you think about like artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are the techniques not just used by companies in their businesses, but these are now getting used by the attackers to further finesse their attacks. Right? Earlier, you used to remember a badly worded email asking you to click on a link and send some information over. But now they are very targeted phishing attacks. Now you get an email posing to be your colleague asking for a specific report, which is in your company's language, right? So they're mimicking that. How? Because they are using AI/ML techniques to understand how users talk to each other and then mimic those styles to create those attacks, right? So they are using technology, but then what are they kind of exploiting? Not the technology, but the user themselves, right? So that's what we are continuing to see, and users continue to be the weakest link that we cannot spend enough efforts to make that link much more stronger.
Great, thank you so much for those very important incisive insights. How more than those who should be using AI and ML, we have the not so good guys who are actually making big money out of that. In fact, when organizations are struggling with their AI projects, trying to see how to make money out of that. So that's a very interesting proposition. I think we'll go on to Vijay, because from the large clients and diverse vertical perspectives, I'm sure he has a lot of different perspectives with regard to how the threat landscape has been transforming, and especially with these kind of sophisticated attacks. Vijay, on to you, please.
Thanks, Vital, for the introduction. When we talk about defense against radical threat, if I need to map with the existing cybersecurity threat landscape, global trend clearly shows that there is an increased threat actor activity comprising advanced persistent threat. This is again predominantly state-sponsored APT groups targeting large IT firms, critical information infrastructure. This is one. Second thing is, if you look at the threat landscape, the threat actors are started leveraging ransomware as a service and use this service actually tools and techniques to launch a ransomware attack targeting. It could be a federal, it could be a government organization, or large the finance institutions. This is also the trend clearly shows day in, day out, there are news which talks about the so-and-so company had this ransomware attack. Third thing, during the pandemic, also even the post-pandemic, I think global trend clearly shows that phishing attacks continue to surge, which means I think during the pandemic, we all actually witnessed that there are a lot of phishing attacks in the form of COVID, the frauds, COVID theme. But now even because this phishing is not a new one, right? This is again the 20-year-old technique, one of the effective technique under the social engineering, right? This is continued to be the initial attack vector or the way to gain foothold on the organization. This is effective. This is the third one. Fourth one is, if you look at for the past 8 to 12 months time, there is increased amount of critical and zero-day vulnerability. If I need to call out few things, there is a log4j vulnerability, there is a spring4 shell vulnerability, there is a Folina vulnerability. In a year, 8 to 12 months time, Google Chrome alone, this is widely used across the globe, right? There are 50 plus zero-day vulnerabilities are identified, which means there is a responsibility for organizations to map this vulnerability within their IT estate to see what is the applicability, and then they need to plan for a patching to protect the system. This is the fourth one. Fifth one, if I need to call out, again, there is an increased trend of seeing supply chain related attack. If I need to call out few things, SolarWinds, this is one of the large scale supply chain attack, followed by Kesaya. So if you look at this two, this is the indirect attack against the organization. Threat actor are not targeting the organization directly, rather they target the consulting firm or the supply chain firm. They compromise through which they target multiple clients. If you take like a SolarWinds, globally they have large customer base. Similar way the Kesai as well, right? If they could actually compromise, again, embed the backdoor on that particular supply chain, through which whoever subscribing the services, they can gain the foothold. These are the 5 things I could actually see when we talk about the radical threat. So what is the need of the hour is, I think there is a need for shifting from the signature-based solution to more behavioral-based detections. Also, the advanced analytical using a AI and ML capability. So there is a strong need for next-gen SOC capability, which means I think we need to have a native, the next-gen capability comprising SIEM, which actually monitors the critical infrastructure, which is the crown jewel of that particular organization. Second thing is the SIEM needs to get the proactive feeds in terms of known unknown, which means there is a curated threat intel, cyber threat intel feeds, which should be a contextual as well as the actionable intel needs to be ingested with SIEM for proactive monitoring and detecting the known unknown. Third aspect is, of course, the product comes with the signatures to detect the known knowns. Then second thing is to get certain actually amount of intelligence on known unknown. That is where the cyber threat intel is going to help. But what about unknown? This is where cyber security professionals are battling to prevent or protect against the unknown. This is where continual hunting on the log sources would help to detect any anomalies or suspicious behavior. I think if you follow these 3 things, because if you look at any organization, they will have n number of technology, n number of solutions deployed for the various purpose. So it has to work in an integrated way to provide the holistic view for the SOC. That is point number 1. Second thing is, organization needs to assess constantly if we have a product or the technology which is configured with certain policies, certain configurations, are they working in an effective way? That is where the red teaming, blue teaming will come into picture to see the effectiveness of organization implemented preventive and detective control. I think if we do this, this is what would help basically to get the context of radical threats and then how we can protect against this radical threat.
Thank you so much, Vijay. I think very important insights into how, first of all, there are more of common sense mistakes and knowns which are compromised and leading to all the kind of different attackers and whatever to really compromise the system. And at the same time, some of those very important tips to say how you should get your act together. I think that was quite valuable. And then we go on, last but not the least, of the panelists is the woman in cybersecurity, Madam Panchi. She wanted to have the last word. So that's where, she said, I would rather be generous to give the others the chance. And thank you so much, Madam. Maybe from your perspective, I'd like to hear about the threat landscape and how that's transforming, especially with the kind of clients, especially I think the SMBs that you work with, a whole lot of them. Your thoughts, please.
Yes. When we come to SMBs, or maybe to be more specific in the banking sector, all these days, the daily banking were done using internet banking or mobile banking, and maybe real-time payment systems or fast payment systems like RTGS or National Electronic Funds Transfer, EFTs in many countries. And then nowadays, RTGS is also real-time gross settlement systems are also being used across many countries. But from here, when we come to cryptocurrencies, there has to be a special mention that from our olden age commodities, we have moved to metallic currencies, then paper currencies. Now we are moving towards the world of digital currencies. When we are moving into the world of digital currencies, are we first ready to accept the digital currencies as a issuer or also as a user? We have to do some basic cleansing of the whole system itself, like the way we utilize our banking channels. For example, the credential thefts as well as the privacy. Still, there are many places or many customers who lose their money because of the credential theft. When this itself is yet to be stabilized, we have to mature or educate our users, and the system has to be ready as a whole infrastructure and ecosystem itself when we move towards digital currencies. And why and what is the need to move towards the stringent systems? Because not only in our banking, there is a huge metaverse world which is already being there using the token systems. The same token based system we may implement in CBDCs also. And when we are moving, having a radical shift towards a token based system, how we are going to safeguard our tokens? It has to be digitally stored in online walls, or whether we are going to have hard walls. This is going to be a real challenge for SMBs as well as for common customers and for even for the large enterprises. So even after speaking about the credential theft, there could be some attacks on double spending also. Suppose if you are saving your tokens even in your metaverse world or in your CBDC world, when your tokens are saved in your hard tokens or as well as in the soft methods, it could be hacked. That is one thing. Or as a issuer, when you are going to speak about the integrity, there could be double spending attacks also. All these days in banking or the financial systems, we have been speaking about man in the middle attacks or the SQL injection attacks like that. These basic attacks are going to stay. Along with that, some new type of frauds or attacks threats are also coming in the industry. Maybe these things also we have to take care. In the second round also, again, some more points we can ponder upon this subject, because this is going to be the future after a couple of years.
Thank you, Panchi, for those remarks. In fact, it was only last month that we had attack reported on one of the blockchains, Harmony blockchain, and they were obviously behind getting all the credentials of the users, but landed up also winning a bonanza of $100 million because they found loopholes in the system and were able to take away. So let's not think that because blockchains by definition are secure, they will be secure. You got to work to make them secure. So that's where I think the message also comes from. Having said that, in fact, it was interesting if you really look at some of these attacks that have been burgeoning. Some of them look pretty silly, in fact, at times, because like Vijay also mentioned that when you leave your back door open, I mean, would you expect that somebody would say, oh, we'll rather close it for them? The attacker would rather like to take that route and come into the system as such. In fact, interestingly, we have been seeing quite a lot of activity going on the Russian borders, and there was an attack which was reported by a group of hackers on a Ukrainian media company, and they are running a radio station, and there was an automatic broadcast of their president Zelensky being critically ill, and that created a whole lot of furore around things, and the Zelensky had to come rushing forward and tell them, I'm absolutely fine, and this is an attack, and obviously you know whom you'll blame it on. But the point really is that if somebody can so easily get into a public broadcast system, which is typically like a media company, and they can create quite a lot of extreme situations. So you are looking at small things which can go wrong, and ultimately I think, as every hacker says, that if you are vulnerable to be hacked, we will hack you. It's as simple as that. So if you are idiots, we will make sure we make use of your idiocy. So I think that's the message which is common. So ultimately, I think the focus comes on two important things. One, you, as they say in the security, which is it is the middle of everything. But then when you say the you, this could be this refers to a lot of stakeholders. Many of those who are obviously listening to this particular broadcast, as well as many who don't even understand what's going on in this. But then everywhere you have people who become the weakest link. I think that's where I think one of the key discussions that we need to have is, in each of your perspectives, when you look at the role of people as the weakest link and how they go about compromising systems, maybe not obviously knowingly, but then what organizations need to do, what individuals need to do in their role to make sure that we are able to stand up against such kind of attacks and also handle them well. I think that would be a very important message that we need to send out to every digital user or somebody who's benefiting from the digital services may not be touched even by them. So with that, I think I'll rather start from the reverse now, starting with the lady in the team, Panchi. If you can please throw your thoughts on that, and then we'll go the reverse. Thank you.
Thank you, Vittal. See, here, when you are a customer or a user, or you could be an SMB customer or a banking customer, how you are going to protect your wallet? Because from now onwards, out of around 190 plus countries we have in the universe, in the world, around 89 are already moving towards CBDC or the digital currency systems. Here, the token-based systems, in most of the places, it has to be made anonymous, because cash, we have it as an anonymous commodity. So like this, CBDC, the retail CBDC will come to us as a token-based system, only tokens. How we are going to save our tokens? If our ATM card or debit card is going to be compromised today, we will be losing the amount which is there as per our limit only. But now, after a few months, very shortly, if we are going to lose our wallet itself, then all the tokens, means whichever cash we have in our whole system, not only in the banking accounts, then we are going to lose that. Then how are we going to protect it? How are we as a person have to make it? Then we should, here also again, mostly it could be social engineering attacks only. So we have to keep our phone, the instruments, electronic instruments, as well as the pin, everything to be safe. When the same when you are, most of the audience are now IT professionals, IT security professionals. When we as an IT security professional or an auditor, we are going to design the system, or if we are going to audit a system like this, what are the checkpoints we have to take? For example, to issue these tokens and all, most of the current infrastructure, the payment infrastructure, which is already built, are only going to be upgraded and then used as a token system. So even in the current system, all the policies and everything which are to be followed, it has to be made stringent. Then this is going to be the backbone or the pillar for the future CBDCs or the metaverse tokens also. Like Vittal said, there are already frauds happening in metaverse also. And still now, most of the frauds are only social engineering attacks, or they are internal frauds. So people are the most weakest link in our whole setup in IT security. So even though instead of talking about IT security, we should start these discipline even from the beginning of IT architecture, the systems architecture. It should be as a culture imbibed among the people who are software engineers also, or they could be software architects, and then even as security auditors. Then the basic discipline of the customers or the users will automatically come when it is being passed on from the developers or the architects to the country or the users, whoever uses the system. So I feel that the basic discipline has to come from the software development itself till the delivery.
People are the weakest link. I think that's again resonating from that entire message there. I think we have to go to Vijay. With his assurance level, I'm sure he meets the broad spectrum, the profile of the organization, both vertically and horizontally, and he looks at people working at various layers. right from the people who handle the customer relationship to somebody who's sitting at the boardroom, and including the partners and the cybersecurity experts and everybody there. So, Vijay, what do you think that when you see and look at the people, being the kind of weak spot everywhere? Where do you think that the organizations and people, what they need to do with regard to protecting their enterprise security?
Yeah, I think topic what we have mentioned is cyber security starts from you, right? Again, to say in other forms, cyber security is a shared responsibility. Cyber security is everyone's responsibility. Again, the employees, organization employees, each individuals play an important role when it comes to protecting the organization, right? They are the first line of defense. This is the other way of saying, to emphasize on each one plays an important role, vital role, protecting the organization. Second thing is, there is a saying, right? If you look at the defender's dilemma, what they say is like threat actor or attacker need just one vulnerability or one loophole to exploit, while basically, that is often the defender has to fix all the loopholes. It starts from process, again, the people and technology. Threat actors need just one vulnerability, one bug or one loophole to exploit. Whereas as a security professional, they need to fix everything, all the vulnerability related to people, process, and technology. So definitely there is a need for change in terms of the mindset, right? If you look at in the past, the information security awareness is something considered as a compliance requirement or standard or the policy requirements, right? Organization used to have a awareness training for all the users once in a year. That's it, to meet the compliance or the certification requirements, right? Now in the current context where still the social engineering is effective, even one people fall prey for phishing, then the threat actor will have a foothold on the organization, which means the awareness is something, it has to be on a continual basis. We need to move from compliance beyond the compliance requirement or regulatory requirement. It has to be a continuous journey, part and parcel of employee life cycle, right? Which means, of course, yes, you can have an annual program. Again, you can have a e-learning program or the capsule program to cover some of the emerging threat. Say, for example, phishing. It could be a phishing. It could be a ransomware related or supply chain related. How the employee play an important role. Third thing is, again, this awareness program can be for general common users. This is again to cover the basic fundamental stuff of security on various aspects. There can be a function-specific training for HR, admin, to talk about the controls related to specific domain. Similar way, today the DevSecOps, right? Developing a secured applications, which means as a developer, they need to know secure coding practices, right? While developing, how they need to integrate security as a part of development lifecycle itself. So there could be a other training focusing or targeting for developer application teams as well. Then over and above, what we need to do is we need to assess the effectiveness of this awareness. That is where the drill coming into picture, right? We can have a drill like a phishing simulation drill. Basically, you can pick up the samples covering 50-60% of the organization employees. Look at the current scenario. It could be related to your performance appraisal system or COVID-related themes or anything related to HR policies, insurance, to see whether people are able to identify, organization users are able to identify such phishing, not falling prey to this phishing attacks. Similar way, now there are a lot of actually social engineering attacks using SMS as well, right? Links. This is where people actually fall prey, sharing their PAE information. So we can have a scenario on phishing as well. Over and above, like overall, organization needs to constantly look at what is the current level of maturity, current level of practices. Again, keeping in line with the people, process, technology. Again, benchmarking with some of the global benchmarking system to see what is the current state. Again, to attain to the next level or improve the maturity, what are all the gaps. Again, the gaps can be the anchoring point for the organizations to enhance the overall capability. This is how I see, I think the awareness plays an important role, and it has to be on a continual basis.
Knowing matters. I think that's a very clear message. So I think it's important that, especially when you are playing an unfair game, with, as Vijay said, you got to follow all the rules of your game, but the adversary has no rules that he needs to follow, and that's where you are straitjacketed to say, you better need to get yourself up to speed on how they work and what you need to do with regard to your fundamentals. Very important questions and answers also given there. I think going on, as Gartner says, Raj, you would rather correct me, that the money is dead, as mail was dead when Hotmail came in. And so they say that it's going to be the crypto world all in the future. There's going to be just the UPIs and the digital channels and whatever, and you'll have every device talking to each other. Alexa already does banking, I guess. So from your point of view, looking at the pace at which we are looking at the technology really galloping away, I'm always reminded of this, this quote from someone who said that by the time I knew the answers, they changed the questions. So I think that's what is happening with the technology. That's what is happening with cybersecurity landscape. That's what is happening with the regulatory side of cybersecurity. I think we are looking to hear from you, because you are in the most regulated segment, and you are looking at the thick of technology shaping up for the future, and especially with the centerpiece being money. How do you look at the key roles that common people who would be actually embracing this system, putting in their very hard-earned money, really need to be brought up to speed by organizations? And what do you think would be the strategies that they need to bind themselves at the foundational aspects of their strategy with regard to fintechs and whatever is happening in your space?
Yeah, sure. I think you just mentioned about a recent crypto hack as well, with $100 million bonanza, right? So, and that's kind of motivating the attackers. Now, gone are the days where you need to spend a lot of effort in hacking into a company, and then probably they get out a few millions at the best, right? Now, crypto has enabled a network where you can have $1 billion hack, right? So, in any organization, if you see there's a revenue generating function and there's a cost function, right? And usually we cybersecurity folks are part of the cost function, and there's a lot of focus on prioritization on the revenue generating enhancements rather than the cost. And we cybersecurity folks have to make sure that we put in the most efficient controls at the right cost, right? So there's always going to be a mismatch in terms of attackers being motivated by revenue versus control implementers who are trying to reduce the cost, right? And that's where we're trying to be more efficient and see how we can continue to improve on some of the hygiene controls and make it better. Vijay mentioned a good point about phishing and doing this continuous awareness, which is like the hygiene level, right? So if you take the hygiene control, which is making sure you go do these e-learnings, awareness materials, emailers, and then on top of that, do phishing campaigns so that people get to know about the link they clicked, and that's not a thing that they were supposed to do, and it ties back to their programs and performance programs. But then even sometimes that is not sufficient. How do you again increase it to the next step? How about using artificial intelligence, machine learning based email security solutions, which kind of learn about how the usual emails are coming through, what are the common pattern of emails that an employee receives, and if there's anything beyond the pattern, alert the security folks or take some actions based on that, quarantine those emails, right? So again, use of technology to further enhance our existing control against phishing. Even sometimes that is not sufficient, because if you see, most of the controls that we're talking about was to secure or business emails, right? Now, attackers are sending emails to the personal email addresses of employees. The same, because we have now secured our business emails, they're sending the same emails to the personal email addresses, personal WhatsApp numbers, personal mobile numbers, right? So which means that we're now not just the closed environment of your company and the business emails, but also looking beyond that. So that's where the external threat intelligence comes into play. How do you monitor your fake sites that are being created, fake profiles that are being created? So some of the really good solutions that have come up on external brand monitoring, external executive monitoring, which can help us understand what the threat intelligence is, right? So again, we can further enhance the controls, which is again from a phishing point of view. So just one topic of phishing, you could see the enhancements we need to do and the levels of maturity we need to put in to make us more secure, right? And the other important message I want to give is, again, touching upon Vijay's point on secure by design, right? How do we move further left in the design and life cycle? We need to get into a place where we stop vulnerabilities or insecure code before they reach the production environment. And the more shift left approach we use, which means that during the secure coding, implementing security coding practices, when you're designing a system, implementing the appropriate security controls. In fact, for our businesses in fintech, everything's based on APIs, right? And within APIs, it's just not the vulnerabilities, but it's also logic attacks that can happen, which means there's no vulnerabilities in the code. It's all perfectly fine. But the way the design has been done on that APIs, it means someone else can exploit that logic and still compromise us with no vulnerabilities in the code, right? So which means the further shift left on the design process is much more important right now. We need to make sure when systems are getting designed, systems are getting changed, we are looking at the patterns and see what needs to be improved from a security point of view and implement those controls, implement those safeguards, even before they get into the production environment, right? And that helps us in getting a bit more secure and then prevent those vulnerabilities from getting into the production environment. So all in all, again, to summarize, it's more on how do we take the basic hygiene controls like phishing and continue to improve on it and use technology like AI/ML to support us and use some of the more shift left approaches, shift left tools to make the environment more secure so that we prevent vulnerabilities from getting into the production environment.
I think great thoughts. I think so. God is always in the simplest of things. So you got to make sure that you are putting a discipline in place and making sure that you use the equally the technological innovations for security much before the hackers can really use them on you. I think those were important messages. I think we had a very engrossing discussion, different thoughts coming from each of your perspectives. Really would like to thank you for that. So I think sum and substance, I think there's some key messages which come in here. One is very, very clearly start with security first thinking. So I think that's the first thing that possibly needs to, because organizations rush to go to market rather than really making sure that you are getting your basics right. In your life, would you put safety later or first is the fundamental question when you're sending your child to the school for the first day. So the same kind of questions is what you need to ask with regard to your application which you're sending to production. It starts right at the drawing board stage. So that is the first, I think, key message. The second thing I think is very clear. The threat landscape is going to become more and more complex. The technology is going to become more and more intertwined. A complete mesh is what we are looking at in terms of the global fabric of economy that we look at from a digital perspective. And that is going to be certainly more and more of complicated to handle all this from a cybersecurity perspective. So unless and until you are having an absolute principle-based security architecture, I don't think there is any going really anywhere, because you're going to lose track of what's gone where, and you're just not going to work with those components in case they break down. And that's something which the hacker is always looking to. Like you clearly pointed out that the APIs, if you're not thought about the negative risks or how somebody can exploit these ATFs right at the design stage, you are actually leaving it open to say, okay, come and attack me. So that's where we are. So I think so the next message is very clear that you got to make sure that your architecture is by design secure. And when we talk about that, every piece that adds on to your complexity or everything that connects somewhere needs to follow those fundamental principles, and it needs to pass those tests if you really want to get that going. And spoken everywhere, I think if people are the weakest link, we have to understand people are the strongest defense, because I always believe that a knowledgeable, aware, security aware, customer facing employee who is sitting at a counter is your best firewall. Because if that person can detect an impending threat, I think you're already kind of secured your organization. So I think that that's the role that awareness needs to play. Organizations really need to empower the people and make sure at their level with regard to various stages of their role in the organization and what they do, they need to be sufficiently empowered, sufficiently skilled to make sure. And this is a journey. You cannot say, oh, we have this annual training program running, which means you're actually not talking security. You're talking about something which happens as an annual event, which is completely out of shape. So you're looking at, by the time I go to sleep and come out in the morning, I'm looking at what are the new threats that have come up this morning. So how can you be so lax with security? So that's again a very, very clear message that is coming out. And I think last but not the least, everywhere one thing resonated: unless you collaborate and work on every aspect of security right across with the common theme, we are going to lose out this game, because it's obviously going to become more complex. It is obviously going to become a size that we may find it humongous to handle from what we are handling now. And the world is going to be a completely different, world, maybe a couple of generations down the line. And it's certainly going to be much, much more, intelligent, smart in its own way. But then would we retain our smartness and intelligence is a big question that comes to be. We'll give all our intelligence to those devices, forget about our intelligence. I think we are going to be a very, you see all those ski-fi movies which tell you that, okay, the humanoids take over your race, not very far off as it appears. So I think going back, it's all possibly coming back to saying you and the common sense, security awareness with regard to that. So I think the message is loud and clear. It starts with simple things that somebody needs to do to make sure that you are on it, maintain that discipline and get there. I think that's the message. But I would rather leave the last word to each of the panelists with just a 3-word message that you can give. I'm going to restrict to just 3 words that you can say, okay, this is my message. Start with Madam Panchi.
Keep everything simple.
Okay, great. Vijay?
Be cyber smart.
Be cyber smart. Okay. Raj?
I will go with our values, simply better together. Keep it simple, get it better, and work together.
I think that kind of almost sums up like, whatever we discussed on this. Thank you so much for all your time. I'm sure that there is a whole lot of takeaways from this particular panel discussion. Again, thanks to the organizers. With a word of thanks to everyone, let's disperse. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.